Okay, let's call our meeting to order for the February the 21st, 2023. Just before we get into our meeting, I would ask council and our guests, if they so wish, we'll take a moment of reflection. So you bow your heads, please. Thank you. All right, the first item then is confirmation of the agenda as it was circulated. We have a recommendation here, and I assume there's no additions, Stan, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so the recommendation is that the council of municipality of West Perth accept the agenda as presented. We have a mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Foster and Councillor Phelps. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Now, next item then is the consent agenda, and we have 10 items there. Is there anything there that anybody would like hold or have a question about or would like dealt with separately for some reason or another? No questions? I don't see any hands going up. Okay, then a motion would be in order that we accept the consent agenda as circulated. Items number 4.1 to 4.9 for information, and also the minutes of the February 6th, 2023 regular council meeting. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Harold, Councillor O'Donnell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay, we can do that. That'd be the first time I ever missed that, wouldn't it, eh? Okay. Does anybody have a conflict with anything on the agenda tonight? Okay, if you find that you do as the meeting goes on, you can always declare it at that time. Thank you. All right, first item then on the main part of our meeting is public delegation. And first of all, we have Paul Seebach of Seebach and Company, Chartered Professional Accountants. And they're here to talk to us a little bit about audit planning and accounting. So I will turn it over to you, Paul. And this is your first time here. We can introduce ourselves and what ward we're from, and then you kind of get to know us a little better. We'll start over on this side with Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Foster. I'm from Fullerton Ward. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say anything else.
Andrew Fournier from Hibbert Ward, and I was wondering, is your brother named Charles?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was wondering because I used to work with you folks on a community program over in New Hamburg. Your office was in.
Oh yes,
down by the railroad
yeah.
track. Yeah, it's very nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there, Ryan Duck from the Logan Ward.
Good evening, Dean Trentowski, Deputy Mayor.
And I'm Walter McKenzie, the mayor. Dan?
Dan Hobson, the clerk.
Doug Phelps, Mitchell Ward. Steve Harold, Fullerton Ward.
I'm Nicholas Vink from the Hibbert Ward.
Diane Chessel from the Logan Ward.
Bill O'Donnell, Mitchell Ward.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Paul, and you just do your magic.
Okay, well, thank you very much. For the appointment as auditors, we'll work hard to complete the audit and help prepare the financial statements and try to do it all on a timely basis. About our office, we're in Clinton. Public accounting is a large part of our practice. We do 12 municipalities, 3 conservation authorities, 4 hospitals, a lot of other public things. So this being local and a municipality really works well for our office. We have 10 employees and 5 are chartered accountants. I am familiar with West Perth. Father was born in Fullerton Township, and a long time ago, my uncle was warden of Perth County. Since we've been appointed, Wendy has been working with us to get us up to speed. And as I said, we really hope to complete the audit May, June-ish or something, or be able to present the statements. Since we've been appointed, immediately she contacted us and she sent us information. We've been able to format our file and build a statement, so that was a good start. In December, we came here for an interim audit for a couple of days, and that was all good. Everything we asked for was presented. We're coming in April to do the final audit, and we're very confident this is going in the right direction. And hopefully, as I said, hopefully May, June, we'll be able to present the audited financial statements. In regards to Wendy, sometimes you start a new audit, you're a little nervous and everything, but she's made us very welcome and accommodating, and we appreciate that. The formal report I have, don't know if you really want to go through all of it. Basically, as auditors, we're contracted to express an opinion on the consolidated financial statements. So that's what we will do. It talks about materiality. That's kind of like how bad the statements could be before it affected how someone viewed them. Generally, it's 1% of the total expenses. So in this case, it'd be around 250,000. Being a little older, you know, we don't really work towards that. If we find any, we check most things about a fifth of that. So it takes quite a few errors, misstatements to equal materiality. Anything we do find, we always present to the treasurer and ask that she would correct it. And most times they do, and that's always good. As auditors, we're required to review your internal controls. Those are things like how you do your payroll, how you do your billings, how you do things at the arena, how you pay your invoice, etc. So we'll review that. If we have any recommendations, we'll make them to council. It talks about significant risks. It breaks down items that we and how we verify them in various different ways, your investments, capital assets, government funding, payables, inventory, payroll, revenue recognition, etc. So there's all different things we do. Some we confirm, some we test, some we sample, auditing. It talks about uncorrected misstatements, any misstatements that, you know, if we happen to recommend a change that weren't made, we would provide that list to council. The timing of the audit, we've kind of talked about it already. We've done the interim audit in December. We want to, we're coming back in April to do the final audit. And hopefully we can present the statement in, say, June. The people who are on this audit team, myself, Robbie Sharm, Alicia Waterworth, and Cindy Rennick, they're all people that were local. They went to work in the city. They worked for large firms and they wanted to come home. So we've been very lucky to have them. And they've all worked for our firm for at least 10 years. And they're all chartered accountants. And, an important thing when you talk to clients is continuity. And I'm pretty sure, you know, we'll be able to come here each year with the same group so people get familiar. Yeah, they know, they get better to know everyone, processes, etc. And that's good. Any audit findings will be presented in a management letter. There's a discussion about fraud. Years ago, fraud was something that auditors didn't really talk about, legal liability, etc. And then people found out if you didn't talk about fraud, what are you doing anyways? So now fraud's the thing we're obligated to investigate, ask questions about, and look into, etc. So we will be doing that. The fee is stated as what was tendered. We have a really, really good history of not overbilling, extra billing, so I'm quite certain about that. And that's really about it, to be honest. We're looking forward to getting into things more in April and going from there. Anyone have any questions about the process or our firm or myself?
Okay, any questions for Paul at this time? We, somebody's got, oh, Deputy Mayor Jankowski's got a question.
Thank you, through you, your worship. So Paul, the auditing process, and it's not a totally invasive process. It's like you said, you'll do selective examinations or samples of part of the processes, but not an end-to-end of the entire organization, correct?
No, we don't check everything. You do sampling, you check all large items, you recognize what's a risk item. The way things have gone in the past years, you know, you're not so much into cash. Used to be at the arena, things are a lot of cash, etc. So we don't focus so much on that. Now there's a lot of electronic payments, etc. So you work more on that, more on the computer systems, you know, signatures, etc. and things like that.
That's good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Nicholas.
Is any part of the audit an automated process that we would upload our GL right to you guys and have something done automatically, or is it all manually driven? And if it is automated, then does our information stay here in Canada, or is it up to a server somewhere else in the rest of the world?
We don't, some places do actually upload stuff and use statistical sampling, et cetera. We don't do that. When we come here, we ask that Wendy and the finance would provide us 3 computers so we can go online, et cetera, but we don't take any of your information. We would never, upload your payroll and things like that. The trial balance, things like that, we have in our office and we put it together, but as far as taking information, we don't do that. Privacy is a big thing. So.
Anybody else? Okay. We look forward to seeing you probably maybe in June again with the good news, and certainly appreciate you taking time to come and talk about your firm tonight. So thank you very much.
No, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity, and we'll promise to do our best.
Right.
Thank
Good. Thank you. All right. Our next delegation is Kelly Lorenz from the Kin Club of Mitchell. And Kelly, we will let you have the floor.
Hello. All right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. As you know, I'm Kelly Lorenz. I actually grew up in this town all my life, but I was a part of the Connect group that recently folded a few years ago. And I was in the club for probably about 10 years. And I just, after we folded, because we aged out, we just wanted to look at starting up another club. So I started talking to people last summer. This is Earl from the Godrich Kinsmen. I started talking to a lot of people, and as I got discussing with things, we decided that we would like to look at the possibility of starting a new club in our community, because this community can definitely use it. We have always enjoyed things in this community that Kin have offered, like things we've done before, like the Rubber Duck Race and Corn Fest and the beach party and senior card parties and services galore. So we just want to let you know that I've been successful at getting an entire group of 25 people together, and we would like the support of this town to welcome us in starting a new Kin Club, which invites all sexes, all ages, and so with all these people, I've got 22 completed. 2 currently working on their applications and 1 transferring from another club. That equals our 25. Obviously, because we're new to this, we don't have any money. So we were actually coming to also not only introduce ourselves, but to see if the municipality of West Perth would be willing to cover our charter night fees. So basically the venue. So we have a venue that we can get for $200 in town at the Mitchell Legion. And I was wondering if the town would be in support of being able to make a donation to us to cover that, so that we can have a charter night and start our club and start putting back into our community.
Okay. I'll throw it over for questions here. Anybody questions? I have a couple, I guess. First of all, you could have had this facility for free, couldn't we, Dan?
I believe it was discussed, but I think the logistics of the night that you're planning, there were particularly around meal preparation, I think was a concern.
Okay.
So
All right.
we had discussed the community center as well.
Okay, nope, that's fine.
Yes.
Normally when a new club is formed, and I'm not sure about the Kin Club, but I guess I'm a little more familiar with the Optimists and that, but usually another club from another municipality, and I know Godrich is here tonight, they sponsor the new club. Does that go on with the Kin Club?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
okay. So basically, you're asking for $300 to offset the costs of renting the Legion, is kind of what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Doug?
Where do you plan to have your regular meetings and then pay for that then?
So right now we're having our meetings at the Legion, but we have had meetings here as well, using the community room because it is a very nice facility. And, it's at this moment in time, it will be at one of those two locations whenever we do it. But we have been having them at the Legion, as of late.
I'll just be tough on you because I was a kid for years,
That's okay.
22 to 40. So
Okay, great.
Well, okay, Deputy Mayor Jankowski?
Thanks, your worship. So Kelly, welcome. Welcome to West Perth, or re-welcome, I guess, to the Kin Club to West Perth. You mentioned some past events that the Kinsmen and Kinettes have sponsored. Do you have a sense of what kind of events going forward that the club would be sponsoring in the community?
Well, we've had lots of discussions on ways to raise funds and services we'd maybe like to provide to the community. We don't have anything written in stone yet, but there has been talk of possibly bringing back the rubber duck race because that was a great fundraiser. We also talked about working with seniors, whether we could start a service that way. Again, we used to do senior card parties here in Mitchell, and do up little packs for them and stuff. And winners got these little packs with like fruits and snacks and stuff. And we used to decorate the gazebo at Howie Morenz Park. Like, I don't know who does all these things now that we've been gone, but we would certainly like to look back into doing some of those things as well. Helping it with sports teams and, wherever we can put it. In fact, when I was in Kinettes, there was a young lady from Stratford area who needed a set of lungs. And because Kin supports cystic fibrosis, we saw that she was looking for some help, and we actually donated quite a bit in that effort to help her. She got her lungs. And the thing that sparked this for me again was because I just read an article not that long ago that she was rejecting them and she actually needs a second set. So these things just kind of hit home. So I would just like to help wherever we can help. And I would be happy to work with any of you if you had ideas as well.
Okay. Councillor Duck.
I just maybe like to say I'd like to make a motion that we include the $300 into the donation fund request then, if I can do that.
No, because I was going to bring it up under new business later on in the night, because we do have some other delegations. So that's the way I was going to handle it. And then I'll let you do that if you wish. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for coming and doing your presentation. We appreciate that. And we do know there is a need for service clubs. No question about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. The next item on the agenda is the conservation authorities, and we're going to wait because Phil Beard from Maitland Valley will not be here until later on in the evening. So we're at maybe 9 o'clock as it says on the agenda here. So we're going to skip that one for now, and then we're going to come back to that maybe closer to that time. So moving on to reports. And we have a couple planning reports here for us tonight. And the first one is zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 1722. And John is going to do that one, I believe. So John.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie and Council. You should all recognize this zoning bylaw amendment. It was completed a couple weeks ago. through a public meeting. We're here today with a recommendation. It's just on line 29 there, southeast of Mitchell there on concession 5 lot 10 in the Fullerton ward. So the area in yellow will be rezoned A1 for surplus farm dwelling severance. And it's going to allow the non-farm residential use. And then the area outlined in red will be rezoned A3 to prohibit the construction of any dwellings or structures. This consent was B09-22. The retained lands have 41.25 hectares, and the severed lands have about 3/4 of an acre. This photo was taken looking south, and the CBO deemed the dwelling habitable on June 13th, 2022. So notice a public meeting was given, and we conducted that public meeting here a couple weeks ago. The only comments that we received were from members of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority who have no objections. I can take any questions now. Thanks.
Is there any questions for John with regards to the zoning bylaw amendment? Oh, there we go. Okay, if not, the recommendation that we have here is that the Council Municipality of West Perth received a report titled Zoning Bylaw Amendment 17, 2022, affecting lands described as Lot 10, Concession 5 of the Fullerton Ward Municipality of West Perth, and that the Council approved the zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 17, 2022, affecting lands described as Lot 10, Concession 5, Fullerton Ward Municipality of West Perth. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Harold. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you, John. Okay, the next one is the zoning bylaw amendment 1, 2023. And I believe Susanna Reed is going to walk us through this one. So Susanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor McKenzie, and good evening, Council. This is the zoning bylaw amendment for Grant and Laurie McDougall's property. It's between Dublin and Mitchell on the west side of the highway, sorry, the north side of the highway. And the public meeting for this file was on February 6th as well. It's a surplus farm dwelling severance. And so this zoning bylaw amendment is conditional to the surplus farm dwelling severance application. If we go to the next slide, the application is to amend both the severed parcel and the retained land. The severed parcel is to recognize a residential property in an agricultural area with a reduced side yard setback. And the retained property is to rezone the farmland to prohibit the construction of a residence and recognize a reduced lot area for that farm parcel. So the department's recommendation is that the application be approved.
Okay, thanks, Susanna. Any questions for Susanna on that zoning report? Okay, after you see it for about the third time or so, and kind of get accustomed to it. Okay, if there's no questions, then the recommendation is that West Perth Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment 1, 2023 for lands described as part of Lot 29, Concession 1, 6720 line 34 of the Logan Ward Municipality of West Perth. Period. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Chessel and Councillor Phelps. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thanks, Susanna. All right, moving on. I don't believe there's anything from the chief building official or the fire chief or the librarian or the operations manager. Recreation and facilities and parks manager, we have a red grant application, and I believe Jeff is going to do that one for us.
Good evening, Council. The report was prepared by Darcy Cook, and I reviewed it with him. I would just highlight that there's this application that we're preparing on behalf of West Perth is really cognizant of the time of the year and where we're at in our budget process and that we have a difficult budget. So we prepared the application to provide some assistance with projects that we're planning. And if we get the grant, we would just be able to do that much more of those projects. You'll see in the report that we talked about how we could do some of it in 2023 and then come back for the balance of it in 2024. And the biggest chunk of that 2024 work would be the signs that would be put through our trail and park system, developing, moving our West Perth brand onto the trail standard, and then getting a very good policy for where those signs should go and what they should say from a liability and risk management standpoint. So it's a project that's a very high priority for us already. This little bit of extra assistance for the various components that we're applying for in the grant would allow us to do 30% more, I suppose, technically, and it doesn't involve any new money in the 2023 budget. And if we don't add any extra to what we're anticipating, would be no new money in the 2024 budget. And the recommendation is before you on the screen, and I can try to answer questions if there are any. Oh, I should, sorry, one more thing I want to add is that the county is making an application as well, and we're coordinating these applications. Ours is focusing on this stream, which is more local, and the county's is focusing on business retention, a business retention type project. Yeah.
Okay, questions for Jeff? Councillor Bay?
Jeff, I wasn't clear exactly. In the report, it said the grant is estimated to be worth $107,000. And then we would contribute 75,000. So that would make the total project of $180,000.
Oh, there's components in the grant that are staff time. So yeah, great. I think the 107 is the total, sorry, with the 75 and 32 making 107, right? So that's, but the grant value or the overall project value is higher in the grant and that staff time. But those numbers, they're listed in the financial section of the report. The grant is estimated to be worth 107,000, made up of 75,000 expected to come from municipal and 32,000 from the grant funding. So the province, that makes you 107. It's
So-
just right at the 30% round.
I think I think I know what Nicholas is asking, and I saw that. And it could be a typo, like it's not the grant, it's the project that's 107,000, is it not? It says grant, but I think it's supposed to say the project.
Yeah,
Does
sorry.
that make
Yeah.
more sense?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And I had a question about this when Darcy first showed it to me too, because the project value is actually quite a bit higher even than the 107, but that's the staff time that we show in the ineligible grant components. But you're correct. It should say the project is estimated at 107.
Other questions? Anybody? Nicholas again?
Yep, if I may, then I guess this 107 is going to do a little bit more than signs. What portion is which year, and what would the entire project be for the 107?
So I'd have to go back to the report, but the components of the project are dog park improvements, trails improvements, which is, for example, we have the set of stairs that we're putting in down at the wetlands, anticipating to put in. And we'd like to do not only the stairs, but we'd also like to do enhancements to the ramp that provides access to the accessible viewing stand. And that ramp that's there isn't accessible. We're not able to fully obtain the money for making it accessible because that's a specific grant exclusion, but we can do enhancements that are part of our project to improve that. And that's where we're getting the 30% more to get more benefit out of the project. So it's the dog park, the trail improvements, which is the stairs and the ramp. It's the other big one is the signs, the implementation of wayfinding signs in the parks and trail system.
Other questions? If not, oh, sorry.
So if I understand correctly, then the county grant application focuses more on the other priorities we identify in our strategic plan in terms of economic activity like jobs and attracting jobs and business and that sort of thing. Is that how this is divided up between ourselves and the county?
Yes, correct. And I should mention that this project, I'm not sure if Darcy mentioned, it does go towards our strategic initiative of making West Perth a place for our residents to enjoy these amenities and also to attract people to our community to enjoy the amenities like the wetland trail system or come and use the dog park and those kinds of things. So that's how it fits into the RED grant.
Anybody else?
Yeah, maybe one more then. There was some discussion a couple of years ago about moving the dog park to the original spot that we had thought of. Is that a consideration to use some of this money to do such a thing?
So we did do research on the possibility of moving the dog park across the road from where it is now. And it becomes, as we got into that research, the land across the road would be considered to be CAS lands. And I'm trying to remember exactly what that CAS acronym stands for. But it's basically, because of its location to the landfill, it's a location where you have seepage. And we own that land for the purposes of allowing the CAS process to occur. And to obtain a record of site condition to use it for park has the same standard level as using it for residential because it's considered a sensitive use. So we pursued that and we had a real estate inquiry, we looked at it and then we abandoned it because of that inability to obtain a record of site condition.
Okay, good questions though. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, if not, we have a recommendation here, and the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth endorse the application for the Pause and Paths project for the 2023 submission to the RED grant. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Fournier and Councillor Foster. Sorry, I did that last week too. Sorry. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, moving on. Brings us down to reports from the treasurer, and we have a few here. So Wendy, I'll turn the floor over to you. And the first one is with regards to draft budget status report.
Thanks, Mayor McKenzie and Council. I'm just going to take a second here to get organized. Sorry. Okay, so the first report then is just the status update. Just wanted to let council know that there's been a few changes since January 30th. So we just wanted to kind of make note of those. So there was adjustments to the interest revenue because we paid off the admin building. So we adjusted that income so we weren't overstating our interest. We also identified that we hadn't kind of separated out the two admin buildings. So we added a few more costs in to carry the two buildings. And so that's an increase we've seen there. And then we're waiting on some considerations from executive committee. And so those are in the budget right now. We're just waiting for the approval before we actually issue those reports. And then when we reviewed the capital and the grants that we received, we were assigning the projects and there wasn't enough capital work to allocate AMO. And so it was sitting in as a revenue. And so we've transferred it out. So that made a 3% change in what we presented in January. But those funds, we could use them next year. Just there wasn't enough capital in this year. And then when, just from the resolution from the streetlights, the funds were coming through a special area rate. And then we moved it so that it was on the levy. And then that is showing up as a 1.85% increase.
Okay, I'm just gonna back up a little bit, Wendy, because we've got them split out for recommendations, each report separately. Or did I overstep? Because the next report is the streetlight budget report.
Yeah, this report just kind of identified a couple of the changes.
Okay, all right,
high
carry
level
on, sorry.
changes. I just wanted to, I don't know, be transparent and let you know kind of what we found and what we've seen since January. And so basically that's the summary of that report, is those few changes.
Okay, all right. Okay, questions for Wendy on anything there on that first report? Deputy Mayor Jankowski?
Thank you, your worship, through you. So Wendy, you said that our level of capital spending was not high enough to trigger AMO grants being received.
Sorry, we've received the funds, or we will receive the funds. That's our allocations, 293,000, but it is specific to capital, so it can't be applied to operating, and we can't double up on projects. So our OSIFA allocation is going towards, it's in my capital report, is going to line 46 and the bridge and a little bit of Georgina Street, I believe. And basically that doesn't leave much left for transportation. And we've typically used AMO gas tax towards bridges and roads.
My next follow-up question is, so that 293 from AMO, is it available to use on this year's budget, or do we have to hold off until next year?
There isn't a capital project that is available. So we can't use it for Ketterson. You can use AMO tax for different streams. We typically use it for roads and bridges. For Ketterson, you can't double up. So we're already using the grant for, I forget the name of the grant for the Ketterson, but you can't have two. So it's 293,000 and it can't be used for fleet. So it is restricting our use of where we can use it. So unless we put a capital project on, it's being transferred to the reserve.
So if we had an emergency road or bridge situation, that money, currently it's set aside in reserve, but it could be called up in an emergency if we needed it between now and the next budget.
I believe so. We do have to report what we're going to use it for. And so I'd have to check to see what kind of timelines we would have to report that we were going to use it for that, but I can follow up with that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I guess to summarize, we may not be using the AMO grant, but we haven't lost it. It's going to sit in a reserve until next year. And then there'll be an additional AMO grant next year to go with it. So it would probably make a future capital job maybe more pleasant to look at with the funding that's there. Anything else in that report, Wendy? Sorry, I jumped in there. I thought you were moving on to the next one. Okay.
Walter.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so how about resurfacing with gravel as an example, as a capital improvement?
You're looking at me?
Well, I'm looking through you to Wendy.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I was going to say, there's quite a few people that maybe wouldn't look at gravel as an improvement, but anyways, go ahead, Wendy.
We could definitely look at it. I know there is some limitations with the AMO gas tax. We also do have the double up that we received in 2021 that we still have in the bank. And so I think it was, so there's 500 and some thousand. And then if we get 2024's allocation, yep, in the right year, there'll be over 700,000 for capital. And with this kind of the streamlining of capital this year, probably have a bigger projects or bigger capital investments coming next year. I know James Street was taken off, so that'll probably be coming in 2024 for sure. And then I know Mike has his capital asset management plan. And I'm not sure what's on all of his sheets to come forward, but I do know we have a lot of capital to do. Just we were trying to just do priority one capital this year to help with the budget process. So if we brought in AMO, it wouldn't change anything because we'd have to bring in the expense.
If I may, the gravel resurfacing is already there as a capital project that we could, and whether it shows up as a capital or expense, I'm not entirely sure, but gravel, we spend a lot on resurfacing gravel.
I'm just going to bring it up and see what it.
It doesn't have to
I
be
can go
solved
back.
tonight, but just a question.
Well, we, and I see Diane's got the budget book out there, but I think we roughly do half the township every year. And of course, most of that, if not all of it, goes on side roads. I think there's only maybe 2 concession roads that aren't paved. So that's, a yearly operation. I don't know if that would, it's kind of a Mike Kramer question, and we can certainly pop him an email, or if he's here at our next meeting, we could zoom in on that, Nicholas.
If I may add, I mean, this is an update for where we're heading with council. So these are great questions that we can come back and answer. We'll be coming back on March 6th, bringing a number of other reports. And then the council, the budget will get deliberated. The next time the budget will be deliberated on March 20th. So that's the evening where we're expecting, and any input that we receive through these discussions can help us with what we bring back to council. In fact, it's very helpful for us to get a sense of where you want to head in this discussion tonight so that we can research it and have it available for you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, the recommendation is that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the 2023 draft budget status report as information. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Chessel and Councillor Duck. Last call for questions. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then the next one is the streetlight budget.
Okay, so the streetlight budget, we obtain a legal opinion on word special versus a flat fee. And basically in the municipal act, it doesn't allow you to flat fee across all the properties in your municipality, because then it's not considered special. So we're not able to do that. And so we're just bringing back the report, or letting you guys know that the legal opinion said we can't flat fee it across. And then basically my recommendation is just to direct us to put it onto the general levy. I know there's been a lot of concern and questions, so really open for discussion and options for how to handle the levy. We can either keep it as it is. It will save 1.85 on the levy. I would just recommend that council direct staff to bring back a policy. It's very hard to justify and defend the way it is now with the area rate, or could put it on the levy. Currently, the special area rate collects it, and putting it on the levy would show it as an increase in the levy, because it's not collected. It's collected across the whole municipality instead of the user group or the special area. So.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Open it up for questions. If there are any, I got a couple or comments, I guess. No questions? Go ahead, Nicholas.
I could support putting it on the levy as long as we had an offsetting revenue, like, for example, the earth proceeds that we collect an interest and in dividends. That would be nearly equal to the amount that would be put onto the levy. And so if we directed the earth proceeds to go against it, well, essentially go on to the as revenue in the general levy, I could see the two offsetting each other, and then I could support taking off a special and putting it into the levy, but then having the offset of nearly the same. And if we use the same train of thought that that you used here in the report, that it's benefiting the municipality as the whole, then I could see the earth proceeds benefit the municipality as a whole as well too.
Yeah, we definitely have looked at Earth and trying to find the direction that puts it into water and wastewater. So we're still researching that. But yeah, if that's council's direction, we can definitely bring back a report to kind of validate all of that.
I can just directly relate to that question too. I think we have to explore if that revenue coming from the earth interest was intended to be part of the water business plan and the water rates that we've set. And that's research that I know that we're working on, so we wouldn't be able to offer that to you tonight. And I want to emphasize the other choice is if you choose to ultimately move it to the levy, but not move it, like to keep doing it as a rate for a couple of years until we can get over this bump with adding more to the levy. That's also a logical choice. I think staff are saying ultimately we should move it to the levy, but if this isn't the right time, it's a very fair thing to give staff direction to bring it back for reconsideration in a couple of years. And when the loan amount comes off of it, it becomes a much smaller amount, and perhaps that's a better time to bring it over to the levy and sort of consolidate rather than to bring it over now. And I think I could even say probably even stronger than the words perhaps. I think that starts to look like a logical time.
Deputy Mayor Tomkowski.
Thank you, through you, your worship. I guess following what Councillor Vink and CAO Brick have said, I would support that investigation of how the earth dividend can be allocated. If it can be allocated to the streetlight situation, what does that look like in terms of dollars and cents? Or is the other alternative better, which is to delay, continue with the special area rate for now and delay it for a year or 2 year, whatever time it takes until the overall financial situation stabilizes itself, then just see what our options are, what Nicholas has proposed or what Jeff has said. What do those two options look like? And then we can decide from there how we want to proceed further.
Councillor Foster.
You said you've been looking into how we can allocate the earth interest. I was just wondering if there's an estimated time that would be done.
I'm gonna look to Monique. I know we have a box and it's all paper and we've been kind of going through it. We're just in the middle of budget and year end. So priority wise, it's hard for us to divert our attention to different projects, especially if we want to meet our audit and requirements and our FIR filing, try and be closer to the May deadline. If council wants it, we can prioritize it into our routine. I just think right now it'd be harder for us to meet some of our other deadlines if it came onto our priorities.
I just want to take this opportunity to add, and I think it's more important that it come from a CIO than the treasurer, because of it's another one of these. This allocation, the decision on how to allocate it, there appears to have been logic behind it, but there's no specific resolution for it. And it was the nature of the way we did business. And as you have staff turnover and you lose that staff knowledge about why we were putting it there, when this question comes to Wendy today, Wendy can't answer it because she doesn't she wasn't here and she doesn't have that corporate memory. So we asked the previous treasurer. She feels very strongly that there was a direction that was to be allocated to water and that it may show up in the water financial plan. It hasn't been as obvious as she felt it would be because there wasn't a lot of documentation. So we're trying to get the answer. And it's important to this discussion. And, you know, if you wonder why we're much more deliberate about putting resolutions in front of you that are very specific about putting reports in front of you with individual resolutions, it's so that in the future, it's easier to go back and find this kind of information, because this is a very difficult little nugget of information to find. And of course, the reason for making that decision, whether there's a bylaw that would have to be repealed or whether, you know, however we're going to handle it administratively is a very important choice because it's quite a bit of interest each year. And so we're trying to make sure that we're not being unfaithful to a previous council's intention here, but we haven't been able to find the smoking gun.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Harold?
Yes, I think we should go back to the special rate. And we've got enough unknowns at this point. I don't think it would be wise to throw it onto the general levy for this year. Possibly when we have more time to look into it, we can do it next year or the following year. But I think for this year, we don't need to make the general levy any greater than what it is. We don't know about that earth money. I understand what Councillor Vink had mentioned there, and I agree that's probably a good thing if we're able to do that. But at this time, we don't know. And I don't think this is the time of year where you should be trying to figure that out.
Councillor Vink?
What point do you need that 2 days that you talked about to make the special rate happen on the taxes? Because I guess if we don't use up that time could be used to finding out the solution if need be.
I would say the 2 days is cumulative throughout the year. So the busiest time would be when we're generating the levy. So, and the tax bylaw. So when we do the tax bylaw, which would be in June or May, depending on how quickly things get approved. But yeah, there's time there. And if we just do status quo, we would just kind of roll everything back, keep the budget the way it was, and then roll everything out into those spreadsheets. And then the tax clerk would then pull all the information, and that part was very time consuming, and that wouldn't happen until probably June. And then we would definitely have a better idea of the earth dividend, and we would have a good idea about the water financial plan, when the next one is, and what's been kind of baked into the rate. I know that we don't want to disrupt that plan if it's a 5-year plan, and when the end date for that plan is. A lot of moving parts, but I think I'd rather be smart about the decision than rush it, for sure.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Foster.
Would it be possible to could we put a motion forward that if it comes back up and we have a resolution on the direction that the earth money is used in, and then we talk about it if we find a resolution based on that? Or something along those lines?
What I would suggest, because I'm only one person here, we do have a recommendation here that has been forwarded. I suppose we wouldn't have to vote on that recommendation to change it, but the recommendation is that we incorporate it into the general levy. And I may be thinking off course here, but if with all the questions that we've had here tonight and the uncertainty, I'm thinking that we would take that recommendation, vote it down, and then come back with one to leave it at the status quo for the next year or maybe 2 until Wendy can sort all this stuff out and then come back. Now, if you don't like that idea, Alex, you can come up with another one. That's not a problem. But I'm just sitting here wondering how we're going to handle this. And I think with what's been said, we would probably be best to, as Wendy said, take our time and do it right. Oh, you got a
Just if I made a quick comment or two. It's not a matter of searching for a resolution. I just want to clarify that we actually have a very good database of resolutions. The issue was there wasn't a resolution made, but there was clearly thought or rationale behind what we've been doing, the action that we've been taking. So that's what we're trying to find, is where that backup document is sitting. So it's not a resolution. Additionally, I would put this out to council and even to the treasurer, is that for tonight, if council were open to it, we could simply direct staff to come back with more information. And if we find the smoking gun, we can certainly present it to council. Or if we don't have time for that, then that's where I'd look for Wendy. If she wants direction tonight from council, then we can take direction from council of whatever way they want.
I think for me to get the budget kind of ready for the March 20th meeting, it'd be nice to know if it's going to be status quo or not, because it does take a bit to kind of retract what has been changed. It's not a lot, but it does take time. And so if that direction could be provided, that would be great.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Oh, sorry, I got two over here. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to offer the suggestion, if it needs a motion to vote down, as you said, Your Worship, to vote down this motion and then bring forward the idea that Councillor Harold has brought forward to resolve the issue for this time.
Sorry, Dan.
The motion is just a recommendation from staff, so the motion's not been moved or second. So if, in this case, yourself or Councillor Harold wants to move the motion that he suggested, as far as procedural goes, is up to the
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that. Well,
I guess
I'm just-
I'll offer to get this recommendation on the floor so that we can deal with it, and then
I'm just going to stop you for a second. Dean, Councillor Duck had his hand up, so I'll let him say, and then I'll come back to you. Okay?
I was just going to echo Councillor Harold's comments, and then Dean summed it up. Sorry, Councillor Trent, Deputy Mayor Trenkowski summed it up very well. So that's all.
Okay, I'm looking around. Any more comments before we move on? Okay, Dean, floor is yours.
all right, thank you. So I'll to get this motion, a recommendation on the floor, I will move that council endorse the recommendation as presented by the treasurer in the report to direct staff to incorporate the streetlight budget into the general levy.
Do you want to just read that one again?
Making a motion that to move that we endorse the recommendation that the council of the municipality direct staff to incorporate the streetlight budget into the general levy.
So that's the motion that we have before us, the recommendation. Okay, so you're moving that. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Fournier. Okay, discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, ready for the vote, and the recommendation is as it was printed, that staff be directed to incorporate the streetlight budget into the general levy. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Okay, now I would entertain some direction here. Councillor Foster.
A motion to postpone any action on the streetlights for a year till next year's budget to see if we are in a better financial position or something along that lines.
Can you kind of massage that motion a little bit?
No, we'll leave it to the experts to figure out what sounds best.
Yeah, like I think we want to let staff work on it and come back with a report, and whether it's a year, whether it takes a little longer, I'm not sure, but there's a few missing pieces here that we need.
we just put up on a screen and perhaps Wendy, for your sake, is you might want to add that we continue with the area rate. Is
Yeah,
that-
if we could say that we continue with the current area rate as is. That way we're not creating a policy and then having the policy also on top of everything to deal with. We can continue it as is. And then maybe some direction for staff to investigate the earth dividend. And then also how it's tied to the water financial plan.
Can we change 2024 to the future budget?
Yeah.
Instead of putting the pressure on them again, like, there's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's quite a bit of, we're kind of running around in circles here on the streetlights because we had 4 original motions and then Councillor Foster made another motion and then they said we legally can't do it. And so until we've got all of our answers and everybody has an opinion how it should be, but this is kind of a complex thing over streetlights, but maybe it isn't a resolution we can make by 2024. Can we just put future budget or?
I would suggest you say at least 2025 or better yet, say future budget. And I think that gets the spirit, captures the spirit of what's been spoke about in the floor. And then I think I would recommend to council to consider, and I don't think it was added to the motion directly, that the research on the earth matter is something staff take as direction, and we'll be bringing that back. We're doing that research. We don't need it to be part of the motion. And it wouldn't require an amendment to the motion.
Okay, is the motion the way we want it? I'll read it again. It's Alex's motion. Are you okay with that?
So I just read what's up on the screen and
Yeah,
then we go from there.
Yeah, you
To
okay?
amend motion 1923, previously adopted on January 30th, 2023, to now read the council continue with the area rate as it is until a future budget.
Okay, is everybody okay with the wording on that? All right, so it's moved by Alex, it's seconded by Councillor Duck. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. All right. On then, the next one is capital summary. Sorry, capital summary.
Okay, so there's been a few changes to the capital summary. I'm just gonna find my other sheet on my, here we go. So what was presented in January 30th was a draft, and as we kind of went through looking at final costs and carry forwards, some of the information has changed from what was presented on January 30th to what you have in front of you today. So some of them would include the carry forward of a pickup truck. I believe that one was water, wastewater. I should have made a better note. Then there was the ISIP green stream. So that was a project that we have grant for, and the project is kind of hurtling 2 years. And so we were waiting on some of the final invoices in order to give you a good budget number. And so that number has changed to reflect what we've spent in 2022 to what we need in 2023 to meet that grant requirement. And then, oh yeah, there's a wastewater pickup truck. Oh, that one is the 50,000. So on the original one, the 50,000 that was budgeted in the prior year wasn't included in the total capital investment. But it's being funded through the reserve because they're moving that capital project from 2022 to 2023. The landfill fence was added. Then the capital investment total for the zero turns, just as a different number. I think it was 24 in the first version and it's 35. The net result is 24, just bringing in the trade-in. And again, Ketterson, as the final cost came in, the difference in the capital sheet is reflective of what costs we actually incurred in 2022. And then there was the Ketterson accessible walkway. That was part of the pavilion project and just wasn't, it was kind of overseen when we were putting the whole package together, so it was added after. And then the parks truck was identified as needing replacement. It's a 2008, and so pretty much at its end of life. Then there was a switch for the meeting room technology. We found that we had budgeted for IT and there was room in that budget in 2022, so we were able to purchase the TVs in last year's budget, and so that was removed. And then we added some furniture. So the furniture would go in the collaboration room at the back at $6,000. The memorial forest mapping, so that's tied to a grant. The grant was extended, and so because of the extension, we added the $4,000. I think it was $4,000 for the mapping. And then the Royce Cemetery sidewalk was added, and then the building fee study was moved to operating. It was sitting in capital, but it's really an operating expense. So you'll just see the truck, or sorry, the computer equipment for building. So that's kind of a summary of the changes that were presented. And then in total, we have 31 projects going forward, and our total capital investment is 4.8 million. And the funding of these projects is coming from 423,000 from reserves, 399,000 from user fees, 2.4 million in grants, and then we have 841,000 coming in from trade-ins, shared costs. So that'd be the bridge. Bridge makes the biggest portion of that number with Huron County. And then we have donations, and then 717 coming from the municipal levy. So definitely identified that our investment is quite a bit lower than other years. Definitely saw a decrease in transportation. Typically it's 1 to 2 million alone, and I think it's cut back to 700. So roads definitely took a hit on not putting forward a project this year. Not that we don't have a queue of work to do, it just we thought we'd only put priority 1 projects this year. So yeah, our priority 1 projects include projects that we already were committed to, so they were already carry forwards. So top coat for some of the streets, and then line 46 was on last year's budget, but it got cut, so we put it forward on this year's budget. Essentially, the cut in capital is saving you 9.44% on the levy. And then you could just kind of scroll down. So here we just kind of highlighted over the years what kind of capital investments we've done and what kind of levy requirement has been over those years. Definitely see a decrease in this year. And you'll see some of the projects kind of hovering over 2 years. It's just some of it was delayed in grant announcements or supply chains. And so can you scroll down a little farther? And then here we're identifying, scroll up a little bit. Here we're identifying our grants and what projects we've assigned. So for the OCIF grant, we're doing line 46 resurfacing, and we're doing the bridge, and we're doing Georgina. And then here I talk about the AMO. What we have currently in the reserve is 573,000, and then we'll have 2024's allocation. If we count on roughly another, I don't know, 250,000, you'll have that in 2024's budget to do a capital project. And transportation, you can see on that chart below, you can see where Mike's budget has been 2.7, 3.4, 2.7, and then 7. You can see we've really cut back on capital projects this year. So if there's any questions on the capital, take them.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor Tomkowski?
Thank you, your worship, through you. So I guess the two things that I noticed and you touched on, Wendy, the pathway, the accessible pathway for Ketterson Park. There's 30,000 included there to be charged through the levy. That pathway, when the pavilion report was issued prior to voting in August, that the note from staff was that the pathway would be paid through Parkland Reserve. So I have one other question about the truck, but I wanted to deal with the pathway first.
Yeah, definitely can take a look. We can take a look and see what report and the direction, and definitely we can add that to the Parkland. Can bring in 30,000 for that.
August the 2nd. I have it right here. August the 2nd, 2022. And then if I may, your worship, follow up my second question dealing with the truck. I understand it's a 2008 model. And I guess this is leading to a more fulsome discussion around the council table about what we can do to strategically, be more strategic with our costs in the levy to try and reduce the levy. The new truck, 65,000. I understand we have a 2008 model, but I really think we need to try and hold on at least one more year on that expense. And I'm not sure even if you ordered a new truck now, if you would get that until next year anyway, given what I've heard at this budget or at this council table and other council tables at the Perth County level about the timing of when you order the truck and when you receive it. It may not be an expense occurred in the year that you order it anyway. So just trying to be mindful of how much our levy is and how much we're able to afford.
I don't want to speak for Darcy. I'm not sure the condition of that truck and what repairs are listed for it. He may need to add repair maintenance to keep it for another year. I know as far as purchasing, we've been able to kind of negotiate with some of the local dealers. They have older models, not older models, but they have last year models that we could get versus putting a factory order in. We did look at using Enterprise. Enterprise definitely could provide us a truck. We just we see that we could get a better value if we actually RFP it than use them as a partner in purchasing.
I just have a similar comment to what Dean just had with regards to a pickup truck for the parks. And I'm not sure how much, how many miles they would put on it in a year and what they do, but rather than a new truck, we have two used trucks sitting at the end of the parking lot out here that are ours. I don't know what kind of shape they're in either, but certainly, there might be a few useful years left in them that we could just do it in-house for this time. And, the other truck, if it's in, poor shape or whatever, we can dispose of it however we wish. But, I know there's the one's a fire department truck and the other one is the CBO's truck. And I have no idea what they're on for miles, but, I just drive by them in the parking lot and they would maybe do for a year or two for the parks. I don't know.
Like I said, I don't know Darcy's commitment for that truck. I know the red truck has been stripped of the fire emblems and will be used. So Darcy had a rental truck, I think, for Arena. And so I think the hope is to use that instead of renting a truck.
Okay.
So that one is already being cycled through. As far as the building truck, I'm not sure the condition or the status of it, but we can always bring a report back and see.
So then what's the new truck for?
New trucks for parks. So I'm not sure exactly the use of it, but it's for parks. So I'm not sure if it's towing the lawnmowers around and mulch and clean up like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to micromanage here at all. You know, I think it's something that we could look into, especially this year if we're trying to save some money on a budget. It would be worth looking into, I think. And either one of them trucks would pull a trailer, I'm sure. Well, one's a shell, I'm sure it'll would. I'm not sure about the other one. Any other questions for Wendy? Go ahead, Counselor Duck.
I had a two-part question. It's actually probably more of a Darcy question than it is for you, Wendy, so I do apologize. But one of the capital budget requests I noticed with the priority number one is the lawnmowers, and that's because they have a usual 4-year turnover at a cost of $35,000 to maintain the bumper-to-bumper warranty throughout the use. I was just wondering if it was something we could maybe have a look at to see, you know, how much these machines would be costing us kind of in maintenance and other things if we were to potentially keep them for 2 or 3 years longer. I mean, obviously, if they're worn out and they're needing a replacement, then that would be one thing. But if we're just turning them over every 4 years, just so they have maintained, just so they maintain a warranty, it would be something I would like maybe for staff to check out. And then the second part, if I may, I noticed for the clerk's department, the 6 new TVs to be purchased at a cost of $15,000. Which works out to about $2,500 a TV. I was just wondering if we could maybe see if there was a bit of a cheaper option there, save a few dollars. Because I think $2,500 will get you a pretty swanky TV, but I'm not so sure it's something that we would need personally here.
So as far as the lawnmowers go, I know Mike used to look after the lawn care in the parks, and then Darcy took them over. And that was just the practice that they did, is rotate them during the warranty period. One, because we get the maximum trade-in. And so it saves us, we basically get one free. We have talked about internally about other options, like could we lease one, could we rent one? But as far as what is presented is to trade them in and rotate them out. And then as far as the TV goes, as I previously said, there was money in 2022 for the technology, so those TVs have been purchased and installed.
All right. Other questions? Certainly, you know, some of these questions, okay, that Mike can get back with some answers, or Darcy too. Go ahead, Diane.
For the recreation master plan, I think we need to have a discussion around the process of the plan and the cost of the plan being budgeted for $100,000. I feel like that's a lot of money for what is required. And maybe there could be some discussion around a different option.
I'll let Jeff answer that one if you don't mind. The master plan.
So the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there's two, in 2022, we intend to do a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And in 2023, we intend to do the Rec and Leisure Services Master Plan. The Parks and Rec Master Plan was the last major recommendation from the previous Recreation and Leisure Services Master Plan. There were 58 recommendations, and we've been working our way through them. In 2022, we just had to shelve it. We had too much going on with projects, and we were a little concerned about consultant availability. And we did a bunch of the background work for the mapping of the parks to set up the project, but we didn't proceed to tender it. So we carried that money. It's coming out of the Parkland Reserve. And then the choice to go ahead, and then we brought forward for 2023 the Recreation and Leisure Services Master Plan, because there's a lot of synergy by having them both done together and with the same consultant. So we're going to tap the Parks Reserve, which is money we collect from development to allow us to do parks planning and park development, to do these two plans, but we're going to combine them and try to get a more to get a better price. And it is a pretty sophisticated plan, because the parks and trails part of it is a lot of land value and how much to charge for your parks fees to obtain the right amount of money from developers for the 5% in lieu or cash instead and cash in lieu of land. And so that's a fairly sophisticated economics exercise. And also we require some proximity planning and a fairly sophisticated consultant to help us with the distribution of our parks. The categorization, there's quite a bit of science around it. So that's that part. And then for the Parks and Recreation Leisure Services Master Plan, it's a very important project because for those councillors that were on last time and for any of the new councillors, there was a gigantic debate about a pool, about a second ice pad, and about other recreational amenities that a municipality of our size has some very difficult choices to make. And so the 2016 Recreation and Leisure Services Master Plan did a very thorough consultation and a lot of public input, and was able to very succinctly and I think definitively conclude that we couldn't justify a pool because it'll be asked for. And we weren't talking about a new pad, but we were going to have to get serious about a replacement pad, but we couldn't justify a new pad. So these two studies, which we're going to run together, or we're proposing to run together, lay out a significant trajectory for us for parks planning in the future. And I think we probably can't wait too much longer with the 1974 arena to start planning. If we're going to do a new pad, or heaven forbid we needed a second pad, I don't expect a change in that recommendation, but I expect that there would be a strong challenge to any recommendation that we not add a second pad, because I think the hockey community will feel that it's a no-brainer. We should have a second pad because our community is growing, but the community doesn't grow proportionally when it comes to hockey ice. And the science is likely out there. We just have to put it together in a very thorough process. So that's what those two projects will give us. We could wait, but they're coming out of reserves. They're not levy related. And I think we got to start planning for it.
And I'm guessing maybe part of Diane's question is, how did you arrive at the cost? Because we haven't tendered this out yet.
So the cost is based on estimates from other municipalities and a preliminary discussion with Monteith Brown for the parks plan. We haven't talked about rec and facilities, or sorry, recreation and leisure, but I watch other municipal work really closely, and there were a bunch of these done last week, then the least of which was Brockton, and the recommendations just came out, and they've got, if anyone knows where Brockton is, it's Walkerton, Greenock Township and Grant Township to form the municipality of Brockton up near, where would I say, near Hanover? Is that an insult to Walkerton? Up near Cargill. Yeah, that's a good one. Close to Pinkerton and not far from Eden Grove, if you really want to know where I'm from. And so their project price was in around that amount. And we think it would probably be about 60, but we think if we put the two together, we'll get the pair for 100, as opposed to doing them separately and having to pay 115 or 120. And again, I'm hoping that we get good competitive bids this year, but that market seems to have settled down a little bit, although I'm not sure who's out there in the same spot we are. So we only find out when we tender them.
That answer your question, Diane? I was involved, and I can't remember what time it was. It was when I think we were debating about a second ice pad. And I don't think it's the same one you were talking about, Jeff, but second ice pad. And of course, it talked about the swimming pool, but there was a committee formed, and it was quite a detailed amount of work that was involved in that. And it came back at that time, I guess we were looking at some repairs to the swimming pool, like putting a new liner in it, or do you go and build, an indoor pool? And the results came back. It just verifies your homework that you're doing and justifies the decisions that you have to make. I know 100,000 seems like a lot of money, but if you break it down, as Jeff said, into the two categories, it's still a lot of money, but maybe not quite so bad. Other questions, Councillor Foster?
I'm not sure if this is the time for it, but we're on budget. When the building inspector said he had to get a legal go through all our building laws with Bill 23, I was wondering if we could ask the province to pay for that because it's their bill change.
You could always ask, but
I
I'm
mean,
not sure
we
that
can
it's going to
try.
be any good.
Right? Because it was, I think it was 75,000. I was wondering if we could bug them about it because it was their bill. I don't imagine we get anywhere, but I was wondering if we could try.
I mean, and you know, Counselor Foster, it's, you know, top of mind for us every time, and maybe I've been around too long when we see the province make changes and it has the unintended consequence of costing us a lot of money for what might be viewed as a limited amount of return. And I think we used to complain every time I think it's a complete waste of the ink that the paper you'd write it on. I frankly think also that this government expects us to get on and figure out a way to add more housing and solve our problems without asking for more money, because there's only so much money to go around. And as frustrated as I am about that, it is the truth. There's only so much money to go around.
If they were listening about Bill 23, it never would have went through because there wasn't anybody in favor of it. So
No, you're right, Doug. You know, and you folks see the resolutions that come across, I think, or you probably get every one that I get. And I've never seen a resolution come across yet that's in favor of it. But yet it went ahead. Okay, we kind of got a little bit derailed here. Is there anything more to that particular report, Wendy? That, or have we got it pretty well discussed?
I think it's, I think we've gone through it all.
We've gone through it all? Okay, I didn't know whether we got kind of muddled in the middle there with some questions. Is there any further questions then on Wendy's report, that particular report? Whoops, sorry. Yep.
I'm gonna take the extraordinary move of adding one and for council to consider, and actually maybe just by you can decide whether you want to direct us or not, but back in the fall, we brought a report. Environmental Services considered a report from the operations manager and the environmental services coordinator on the price of our waste bins. And our waste bins were, when you look across our market, our VRA market of partner municipalities, we are the lowest rate. And I'll look to some of the members of that committee to remind me and make sure I'm not coming off. And actually, we had an option in that report, which staff just put it on. They didn't recommend it. I think in hindsight, they would have recommended, but it was put there for discussion, where we could actually transfer about $50,000 of expenses for the program and still be the lowest garbage fee rate across the BRA municipalities, but it would have the effect of moving money from levy onto rates, which more accurately has it paid for where the benefits being received. And I was just thinking, as we were having the streetlight discussion earlier, we've been trying to tackle the streetlights, but if we really wanted to gather the low hanging fruit, we could have acted on that. Now, when it came to council, Environmental Services hadn't made a recommendation to council for transferring that over. And it really does move it from one pocket to the other, but it does make it, it does put it in rates as opposed to in levy, which more appropriately locates it in the municipal fee system. And we could bring that recommendation back for consideration because that research has all been done. If council would like to see another option where we could save that $50,000 on levy, but I have to emphasize that it would just have to go over, it would have to go over to rates, but that's where it belongs.
Comments on Jeff? His comment now? Oh, sorry, Dean?
Thank you, your worship. I guess further to Jeff's point, I was on that committee and Councillor Harold was on that committee as well. And I think when we discussed the rates, the user rates, the increase in user rates, at that time, that was October, we didn't know what our year-end fiscal position with the overall as a municipality. We didn't know then what we know now. So we didn't know at the time how much we should actually raise the user rate. So we just settled at a number that was on or around the rate of inflation, if I remember right, Councillor Harold. And that was the basis of our recommendation. But I would be open to reinvestigating and reopening that discussion again.
Do we need a motion for direction on that, Dan? Or just bring it back, staff? Just bring it back. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay, a recommendation here then is that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the 2023 capital summary report as information. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Felt, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, and then the next one is the reserve report, Wendy.
Okay, I do have some verbal updates on that report. So on when I reviewed it, there was a few items that I overlooked, and so there's a few adjustments. So 100,000 from the parkland is in the budget, but it's not in your report. So on probably the last attachment would have yeah, go up a little bit. Keep going up. Yeah, so right there, this one, so it'd be your last one. The parkland reserve should have 100,000 coming from it, and so it's 100,000 less than what's being presented in the report. And then for some reason I didn't catch water. So raw water, there's about 600,000, 599,000 being contributed into the reserve. And then the cemetery of 18,500. That was just the last motion that's that needs to come out of the tax stabilization. So those are just 3 verbal updates to that. So the report definitely kind of gives you some definitions about the reserves. We have done some work on reserves, but we have a lot of work to still do. We restructured the reserve account, so there was better clarification for us, whether if it was just a reserve fund, if it was obligatory, or etc. So we've restructured them, and then we consolidated the fire department. And let's say on that one. I think if you look at the report, it kind of shows what we did on a budget perspective of last year and then what we actually did. And so during the year, council makes choices and decisions about the reserves. And so it's going to highlight this in the report, but we moved money for the traffic controllers, fire reserves were consolidated, the Lions Playground, the AMO gas tax, that's the doubling up, the Cooper Field council orientation, the library board, the 2021 surplus, health and safety training, some carry forward projects, the Roy Cemetery and administration building. So even though we set things for the budget, there's things that happen throughout the year. And so the report shows kind of the budget view and then the actual view. And then we kind of projected out based off of the current budget, what your ending balances in your reserve would be if we didn't make any transactions after the fact. And so that's the last sheet. And so I think in the past, reserves were netted out. And so you would see a number, but you would know what was being contributed to the reserve and what was being transferred out. And so we've made that distinction in the budget so you can follow it being added and subtracted out. And so if you look at the revenue items, it shows that transfer from reserve and then transfer to reserve will show up as an expense item. So just a little different reporting. I think it's a little more transparent. And we've noticed that in the past, items were expensed and then assumptions were made that it gets transferred. But coming on new, there was no note to know that that's what was supposed to happen. So this new way, when it goes transfer in and out, the budget is a communication tool. So anybody kind of switching a position or anything will know to look to the budget, and they will know to make a transfer to and a transfer from. And so when you see things, I'll use an example like studies. So studies, we would maybe budget 7,000 a year for them. And then we were to put it into a bank account and then maybe in 2 years do that study. And so, but when you expense it, it means you're actually doing it. And so we've kind of switched that mindset. So some are still in there the old way till we catch them all. But hopefully that'll help being more transparent and help for succession planning and just overall understanding of how the funds are flowing through the reserves. So if there's any questions on the reserves, I'll take them. I know the recommendation does have to consolidate the streetlight reserve, so I'll probably strike that out. And we've also, the reason I put in the modernization grant in there for intake 1 and 3 is we know that we like to bring back a report that kind of identifies the projects that were allocated. So if we allocated $10,000 to a specific project, but we only spent 9, is that there's still $1,000 in that modernization fund. So we just want to kind of review that modernization fund for intake 1 and intake 3. Intake 3 was just extended to being December 1st, 2023. So intake 3 was our work plan project, our internet, phone, server, and a few other minor little things that we did last year. So we'll be able to carry costs for those and apply more grant. And oh, and the parking meter reserve, we'd like to kind of do an investigation on that one, kind of see where the start of that fund happened and some of the history, and bring back a report. Right now it's sitting in obligatory. Not sure that's where it should be. Is there any questions?
I can tell you where the parking meter fund started. Probably started when they put in the parking meters. And yeah, it was town. It's another one of those town of Mitchell things that's carried over. And I think it was shortly after amalgamation. That was one of the first things they did, is they got rid of the parking meters downtown. I think we've used maybe that fund for when we did the lawn mowing for the extra parking for downtown. So, okay, any questions for Wendy on anything there? Okay, the recommendation is that Municipality of West Perth direct the treasurer to rename the municipal office building reserve to general facilities reserve for the purpose of repairs and replacement costs. And the staff bring back reports on the modernization grant reserve intake 1 and 3 and on the parking meter reserve fund. Do we have a mover and seconder for that recommendation? Councillor O'Donnell and Councillor Phelps. Questions, comments? Ready for the vote? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thanks, Wendy. All right, next item.
Walter, I was wondering, would tonight be appropriate to give some direction to staff on where we would like to see the budget come in at? I think Jeff alluded to that earlier, but maybe not. Or would this be an okay time or later time?
Well, I guess it's as good as any. It's something that we could bring up in new business if you want, but we can do it right now. Like, we're talking budget, so.
I'll frame up the discussion. I think, you know, as staff, we could use, I think now is as good a time as any to give us a sense of what you're hoping for. But I think I can't ask you to talk about that without reinforcing that the essentially 0%, where I guess it was 1% we did 2 years ago, and the 5% we did last year, kind of coming back to haunt us because we have the base at the number we have. And I don't know if you have those numbers about what the levy requisition is. We were talking about them earlier today, and Wendy said she'd probably get them ready either for this meeting or next meeting. So I'm putting Wendy on the spot. But I just, I think as staff, we understand we're putting you in a very difficult position by saying 16% or whatever the number is. And we understand that you can't achieve that in 1 year. But on the other side of it, the consequences of using reserves to balance it out and kicking it down the road also means that the reserves go down and we delay the inevitable, which we should have started 2 years ago, and we need to start now. And so it's very helpful to staff, though, if we know that you have like a 9% target or a 10% target or an 8% target. If you give us a few of those options, we can develop reserve options, which council that can then make an intelligent decision about the sort of cost benefit of these various options without compromising our reserve position for the future, because it's all about choices. Perhaps you want to read the slide.
Yeah, so I put together this little slide here because I think I've been talking a lot about levy increase, and so which is different than a tax rate increase. And so the levy increase will always be higher than what the tax rate increase will be because you have growth from 1 year to the next. So for example, what was presented in January was 11.93 levy increase results in a 9.2 tax increase. So just roughly 2% there or 3% that you can count on that whatever the levy is, the tax rate will be lower. And so sometimes those numbers can get mixed up or you have to know what number you're talking about. So the levy increase, can you go back one slide? So in 2021, the levy requirement was 8.7. And I think as a treasurer, it's always hard to find the historical information that brought it to that number. So I'm only going to talk about what happened in 2022 is that the levy requirement was 10.4. But we used reserves to drop it. And so that became 9.1. And so when we look at what the levy requirement is this year, we're 10.2. And so I think with the cut in capital and this cost of living, insurance, price of fuel, I think it's not a surprise that we're coming in at 10.2. It's hard. Our reserve structure is kind of set up for capital. So if we take, we have to be careful that we're not dipping into our capital reserves because of asset management and we don't have that long-term picture. I'd be kind of walking blind and using a capital reserve to drop an operating kind of issue. But that being said, the reserves are there for council's discretion. I think as we work through asset management and get the 10-year capital plan in place, it'll paint a really good picture for us to know what's coming. It's hard for me to know because I don't know what's coming and tie that with reserves. And then it also ties in with your investments. So you have investments that are locked up. So we can't deplete our reserves. Those funds are locked. We don't have access to them. So some things to consider.
I think the days of starting a budget session saying we want to come in at 2%, staff go back and do your magic on it and come back to us and end result is 2%. I think those days have kind of gone by the wayside. And certainly, as you said, with the cost of fuel, and everybody is familiar with that cost. I'm just going to add throw another thing out there. And I'm cognizant that at 9 o'clock we have a delegation coming in. The whole budget process, how we're doing it this year, and we're doing maybe a little bit different this year than what we've done other years. Is there any comments on the process thus far? I know we have another go at it.
March 20th, I think we'll
Yeah.
bring the report back in detail, kind of like what you received on the 30th.
Yeah. Nicholas?
I'm having a hard time keeping it straight with some of the shuffling around that we're doing to compare year over year changes. And so that's the most difficult that I'm having is change versus last year in which areas changed that's making this this levy so much more than it was the last time.
And you're not alone, Nicholas. Like, it's a new program that we're using. And anytime you start something new, there's a bit of growing pains with it. Certainly next year will be better, and the following year will be better yet. And once we get onto it, but it's just the changeover and it's like a shell game. We're moving money from here over to here and then from here to there. And it is, I gotta agree, it's a little hard to follow sometimes.
And it's been a change, I'll say, the last 2 or 3 years in a row. So it's not like we can go back 2 years or 3 years because it has changed each time through those last 2 or 3 years.
Any other comments? Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kind of in the same vein as Councillor Vink. I noticed, and I've had the comment as well, that some of our line items are labeled as maintenance, but they're not exactly maintenance functions. They're more capital related. Well, some of the maintenance lines aren't broken down in detail as to what that maintenance entails, and other maintenance things that are labeled as maintenance are really capital functions. So we just need to be a little more clear in the descriptions of what the money's being used for. That would kind of, like, there were some questions here tonight, I think, about what like the zero turn, the theory on the zero turn mowers. Like, there needs to be more information brought forward by the department heads to kind of clarify the thought process that staff is using, but also in the written form, there's, like I said, there's items that just say maintenance 20,000, but no description given what that really means.
We definitely have, as we've been reviewing some of the things, like I said, the transfers to and from reserves, we're cleaning those up so it's a little clearer. And then as far as what is being capitalized and what is being categorized as operation, definitely needs some work. And I think we've had a tall ask in the finance department to get through all the financial statements and audits and change in staff, new staff, and bringing on software. So I think over time it's going to smooth out and it will get better. And I think having FMW to report things like salary and wages, I think it's a good exercise. I know it'll streamline other items, and I think we can report back consistently where we just being put, whereas before it wasn't overly known. It was just a line item that we just increased. And then as far as what's capital and operating, I think we definitely need to look at those, because I would say we definitely have a lot in maintenance that should be capitalized.
I have some questions about what Wendy was using in language there. So you said tax rate. Is that West Perth's tax rate or upper end and education in tax rate? And so you said be careful how we use the word. So I was just wondering what you meant by tax rate there.
that's our municipal tax rate. That doesn't include education or county. So yeah, I know this time when the newspapers write a whole bunch of articles on tax rates and levy increases, it's really hard. You have to kind of understand the language that they're writing it in and maybe a little knowledge behind the scenes to actually know what the number means. But I think I've been trying to use the levy. So the levy is what we need to operate, to function as a municipality. And so that's our budget is that number. And then when you do all the math with the assessment, you have growth in there, and that's why the rate decreases, because this year we had 235,000 in added growth. And so that's why it decreases. So when we talk about the levy, that's that number, and the tax rate is with the levy plus the growth. That's why it drops it.
And the 2022 levy requirement, where you said we used reserves to take it down to 9.1, but we also we have an accumulated surplus that we just replenish the reserves exactly the same amount that we took it down. So how does the accumulated reserve look for this year, 2022?
We're still working on closing the year. We still have invoices coming in from 2022, so we can't close things off quite yet. Working on it.
Then I would, if I may, Walter, the number that I would be most comfortable right now would be a tax rate at about 6%. So what that works out to with growth added into the levy, that would be about where I would be comfortable at, is a 6% tax rate increase.
And I know I shouldn't do this, but I can't resist. I remember you were the guy that insisted to be 0 the one year too.
Exactly. And my point has always been, let's ask for the money when we need it, not before. So if we didn't need it that year, then don't ask for it.
Then you're okay with 11, 12% this year?
But remember, we also have $25 million in reserves. So we have harvested $25 million in levy up to this point. And so do we really need it, especially if an accumulated surplus is coming again?
You would be great with asset management, wouldn't you? Okay, is there anything else at this time then? Oh, sorry, Dean?
Thank you, your worship. I guess further to Councillor Vink's point, I think we need to try our utmost to try and get the net rate into a single digit figure that's in line with inflation. Like the latest, when I Googled the inflation rate, it's around 7%. So we got to try and keep it in line with inflation, because our taxpayers, they're dealing with that 7% number. And if we try and push the limit beyond the rate of inflation, that's just too much for our small businesses and our working people and everyone in the community. It's too much for them to take on at once. We just have to all do our part to try and hold the line here as best as we can and get through the tough times and try and find better days ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Anybody else? Okay, well, Alec, go ahead.
As long as we can keep our tax rate as reasonable as we can, as long as it never goes above into the double digits for the tax rate itself. So that would be an increase from where we're looking at now. So as long as it doesn't really increase from where it is now, it's not looking too bad, I don't think.
Okay, and you speak for all the sheep farmers?
All 7 of us.
Okay, thank you, Alec. Okay, I want to move along. Thanks, Wendy. I know you've been standing there firing the bullets for a little while, so we appreciate that. We're going to go back now to item number 5.3, and we do have our members from the conservation authorities. We have Tracy Annett, Brian Horner, and Phil Beard, and they're going to, I believe it's going to be a tag team show here tonight again, isn't it? Okay, good. Well, I remember, I think it was last year, we did it by Zoom and it worked out fairly well. And we're certainly glad to have you here in person tonight. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. I'm going to forego any formality with introducing everybody here. We've got their name tags in front of them, just because it is getting on tonight and realize some of you have a bit of a drive to go back home. So thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie. Certainly, thank you for the welcome and thank you for us being in person in this beautiful building. Certainly appreciate the yellow brick wall that I saw in the back room there. As you might notice, it's all three of us tonight tag teaming, and I just wanted to recognize our members that have been appointed on behalf of the municipality as well. So we were fortunate enough to have Deputy Mayor Dean Trzaskowski join our board this year, and we certainly appreciated the past efforts of Anna Maria Murray. So thank you for that. Want to introduce your member right now?
Sure. Our member, Steve Harold. We got to meet him. I've met him twice now. Once at our orientation session and once our first board meeting or AGM last week. And as you all probably aware, he took over for our member Mike Tan, who was our chair and vice chair and past chair for a while.
And our new member is Andrew Fournier, replacing Cheryl Mathis.
Okay, so do I have control of the slides here? There we go. I always like to start off with the purpose of conservation authorities. Of course, there's been lots of changes to CAs over the past few years, but our purpose statement has remained the same. And as you can see here, it is to provide for the organization and the delivery of programs and services that further conservation, restoration, development, and management of our natural resources in watersheds in Ontario. So of course, you've got our 3 watersheds that are within your municipality today. And so today we'll each be providing a little bit of an update of our programs and services and the budgets that go along with those provisions. Okay. The side arrow. Oh, there we go. I was doing the down instead. So in the Upper Thames River watershed, our programs and services are kind of 5 main areas. Of course, we want to protect people and property and support safe development, identify where those hazard lands are and keep new development away from those areas. We also deliver landowner stewardship programs, both in rural areas and in our urban centers. Of course, getting those messages of stewardship out. We provide natural places and spaces for recreational opportunities. I'll touch a bit on some of these programs and services later on, but certainly on our lands, we're able to provide that. And informing science-based decisions. This can be through data, mapping, background information, again, that helps our municipalities make decisions, whether it be on planning matters or your own uses. And then, of course, empowering communities and youth. But before I get into the draft budget overview, I just wanted to remind everyone, and consistent with all CAs, is that we will be updating our budgeting process. This comes about because of our mandatory programs and services regulation was passed that require us to categorize our programs into 3 main areas. When I like to think about who's doing the ask for the service. Category 1 is usually the province providing that requirement. It's mandatory for us to be providing those services, and those will be eligible for funding. Category 2 programs are where a municipality could be asking us to undertake the service. Great example that we have in West Perth is for providing risk management services for implementation of the social protection plan. And category 3 programs and services are other more broader services. They're often the stewardship programs, the education and outreach components that go beyond municipal boundaries and extend to the watershed. So with that, again, this is the last year of our budgets being proposed in this manner, and our budgets for the Upper Thames really reflect a maintenance type budget. Obviously, there's some uncontrolled expenses that we're dealing with, cost of living and inflation and insurance costs, like many others, I'm sure. But just wanted to highlight the budget is a means to the end. We've provided with your agenda packages as well, kind of the things that we've been able to accomplish in 2022. everything from our Communities for Nature programs, species at risk, the community education and outreach, the number of students there, the clean water program that we undertake, and then those planning and regulatory requirements that we undertake for all of our municipalities, and then those visitors to our conservation areas. So I'll touch a little bit on what we've done in West Perth, but those are kind of our watershed as a whole. With our combined budget this year, we always like to break it down into the different areas of where revenue comes from. You can see at the bottom of the bar graph there, 1% from the province. We're talking about drinking water source protection and our transfer payment for flood control purposes. And then around 41% comes from our municipalities through levy. And then almost 60% we're able to self-generate, either through fees or donations or sponsorships or other contract revenue that we're going out and finding partnerships to deliver those programs. So when you're looking at our combined budget revenue, this is a draft, of course. We've been refining that over the past few months. That number's changed a little bit, but what hasn't changed is the amount that we're asking for levy from each municipality, and we've highlighted in orange there what comes from West Perth. So when looking at West Perth, it's broken down between operating and capital. The operating amounts 2022 to 2023, you can see it's about a $4,000 increase, whereas capital is a little bit more. And those are primarily related to projects related to Mitchell Dam and Fullerton Dam. The total amounts there, you can see have changed a little bit, and most of that you can see is related to the capital expenditures planned for this year. And when we go through our capital process, it's always through those conversations with staff. So we've had some input from staff and looking at which projects and those amounts. And when we're looking at capital, we're also looking to the water and erosion control infrastructure funding as a source of 50% coverage of eligible projects if there is money in those WECI funds. So it is a ranking system and it's competing against other projects across the province. But for Mitchell Dam, one of the main things that are to be undertaken this year is the dam safety review. Downstream in this photo, you can see the gabion walls. There's going to be a bit of gabion wall repair along the channel works, and then some painting of the motor housings as well. We don't want those rusting away. In Fullerton, it's the cost of kind of the ongoing maintenance as well as initiation and continuation of the environmental assessment. Some of the background work was completed in 2022, but it's that EA that's expected to continue on through 2023. Other things that are considered mandatory as well would be our hazard management, of course, our Planning Act applications, our permitting. In West Perth, we've received 17 Planning Act applications. We issued 14 Section 28 permits or clearance letters. As well, we undertake the updates to the Source Protection Plan, the Clean Water Act, and provide those risk management services as well. But there's other things that we're doing beyond those Category 1 programs that extend into tree planting activities. Of course, there's numbers up there that are provided and the number of trees that we've been planting, some on private lands, some on public lands, but also looking for those partnerships. We've worked with Communities for Nature. We engaged students. There was Mitchell District High School planted 125 trees and 25 shrubs along World Creek. And then, of course, beyond the tree planting, we've also looked at fragile land retirement, some of the wetland enhancement at 11 sites as well. So lots of things going on through those programs. And of course, our community partnerships and education. With those, Walter was nice enough to join us back in the fall for our Celebrating Natural Connections. Our last of those events were held at Fanshawe this past weekend, and you know, similar to the ones at the Lions Club Park, that we've had them throughout the watershed. And they've been tremendous events that both community have really been involved with. So we've also had Nature Nearby events, again, working in Lions Club. We've had 75 people attend those events that were in Mitchell with partnerships with the Rotary Club. So again, when we're looking at providing these services to our areas and our municipalities, it's through those partnerships that we've been able to engage even more people and connect people with the natural environment. Those are just some of the highlights that we've had at the Upper Thames. And it's more than just the budget, it's actually the work that we're doing for our municipalities and to help protect the environment too. With that, I'll pass it over to Brian.
You didn't even advance the slide for me, so you really have to left or right.
That one.
Okay. Thanks again for having us here tonight. So just Tracy looked at, you know, a lot of the things that we do. I'm just going to kind of take a little different aspect of some of my slides. The first one here I'm going to have is our 2023 revenue by category. And I will say for you members, it is our board approved our budget in December. And so these are our budget numbers. And the ones I'd like to draw everybody's attention to, and Tracy, excuse me, Tracy showed you in a different way. She had her levies were 41%. Ours, we both do a pretty good bang for our buck. Ours total, if you look at the general and project levy of 27%, we still think that's, you know, pretty good because on average, I think other CAs across Ontario on average about 1 for 1. When I say local dollars, I look at those ones and say for every local dollar, we generate about $2-3. So we're still doing a pretty good bang for our buck on that. The other one I'd like to highlight is the actual expense summary. And it's Tracy showed you different costings. These are our different projects for corporate services, education, vehicles, equipment, one stewardship. One's environmental monitoring and floodplain management. Floodplain management would be our flood forecasting. If you combine those two amounts, it's around 50%. And again, that's, you know, we're on average with other CAs in the province with those two numbers. I apologize on this slide. Well, my fault. I didn't read the fonts very good, but this is the overall you'll see for what all our member municipalities pay as far as and based on their apportionment amount. If you see on the very far bottom column, it's our overall budget was a 2.4, almost 2.5% increase. And West Perth's share was slightly above that at 2.83. Reason being that is I heard it earlier, somebody talking about the growth. It's West Perth compared to our other member municipalities, West Perth grew slightly more than other member municipalities. So that's why your percentage is at 2.83 as opposed to our overall of 2.48%. And I will say, go back a little bit with our budgeting process. We started with our 5-year forecast, and it's usually in July. And in July, when we did our 5-year forecast, our overall, that's when we go to staff. What do you plan on doing? What do we think we need to do in a perfect world? And when we originally came back, it was going to be an overall of about 20% increase. We came back in September. We initially showed our board the budget in October, and it was around 3.5%. And then the next one, we came down to 2.48%. Okay, there we go there. This one, again, I'm not good with some of these things, but this is, some of you may have seen this. This is, we had to do a time transition plan for our Conservation Authority Act update. And this started in January of 2022. And by the end of this year, we need to have our agreements. This is where I just wanted to put this in there, that this won't be the last time you see me. I've talked to our member, Steve. Our board approved sending out our draft cost apportionment agreements. And everybody should have them now. And I will say that the process for that was we came to discuss with senior staff here. I'm going to single out Mr. Britt. He sat in our meeting over here. We talked about what we need in these agreements. So we bounced them off staff here, and then we took them back with revisions to our board in December, and they approved to send out the draft agreements. And I believe it's a little different approach than Maitland, but I just want to say it. Our board at the time, they thought it would be best to have new members, new councils approve these cost apportionment agreements moving forward. So that's why we've done this process, and you can see it. We will be coming to you in, hopefully there's meetings set up in spring, March, April, May, to have these agreements, to present them again. So that's that update. These are just a couple of photos and similar to what Tracy talked about, different projects. These are stewardship projects that we've worked with the Lions Club members as well as a private stewardship landowner. And then just a collage of the pictures as well through different projects, whether it be windbreaks or buffers. That's all my presentation for now. I'll turn it over to Phil.
Brian. Just like to start my presentation by bringing thanks from our chair, Matt Duncan, and members of the board. We'd like to express our thanks to West Perth for supporting the agreement for services and programs that MVCA undertakes. We have agreements in place with 14 out of 15 of our member municipalities. And we expect to have the 15th in place early this year. So our members wanted to do it with the old councils. And so we had ours finished by the end of July, which certainly makes it easier to plan ahead. So I'm just going to go through our draft work plan and budget for Maitland Valley. So our vision statement is working for a healthy environment. It's been our mission statement since 2010. Our members recognize that we need a healthy environment in order to have a healthy economy. Our mission statement is providing leadership to restore forests, water, and soil. The health and resilience of our forests and our water and our soil are the foundation not only of our economy, but of our life support system as well. MVCA's members have set out the following priorities, which we've been following since 2014. And that's helping our member municipalities reduce the potential for loss of life and property damage and social disruption. Helping landowners and municipalities to develop soil and water conservation systems that help keep soil and nutrients on the land and out of water courses. And ensuring that our conservation areas set a good example for stewardship and are safe for the public to use. And last but not least, to develop a stable financial base so that we can assist our member municipalities to develop a healthy, resilient, and prosperous watershed. We have a number of mandatory projects that all conservation authorities have to do. The government requires us to do these by December 31st, 2024. We must produce a watershed resource management strategy, a conservation area inventory and strategy, which includes identifying any lands that might be good for housing. We also have to do asset management plans for our flood and erosion infrastructure and ice management plans for any ice jam areas that we have in the watershed. So we're starting on those in 2023 because it's probably going to take us a good 2 years to get all that work done. One of the other things that Maitland Valley is working on is dealing with our surplus infrastructure and properties. We've got a number of buildings that are surplus to our needs or at the end of their lifespan, and they need to be removed. The first one is the barn in the bottom, the former Wawanosh Nature Center. That's going to be taken down this year. The Brussels Mill on your right is being severed and transferred to the Brussels Trust. They would like to buy it, and we're happy to sell it for $1. And then last but not least, the Galbraith Conservation Area, which I think most of you know, the Galbraith Optimist ran that for 28 years as a day camp, and fortunately couldn't find younger members to take over and take it on. So we're working with North Perth to see if we can't develop a lease for them to lease it as a day use area and have other groups use it as well, just to keep it in public hands. And we're also working on agreements with Huron East and Morris Turnbury. We have some recreational dams that we plan to decommission at the end of their lifespan. But if those municipalities would like to see them maintained or replaced, then they would have to pay the cost to do that. One of the major projects that we're finishing up this year is our forest health project. We're working with the counties of Huron, Perth, Bruce, and Wellington, and woodlot owners across the watershed to assess the health of forests. We plan to finish this assessment in 2023. Some of our preliminary findings are that our forests are being severely impacted by, of course, the emerald ash borer, and disease and removal. Diversity in our forests is declining. The most prominent tree that we're finding in our forests, besides maple, is dead trees. And those are your dead ash, and the ash make up 30 to 35% of some of our forests. But the beech and butternut are also being impacted by disease. One of the other things that we found is between 2015 and 2020, we've lost over 500 acres of forest across the watershed. Majority of that loss has occurred up in the North Mainland, which is in the Wellington County area. A lot of that land has been converted to agriculture. In our stewardship programs, our major focus is to work with landowners to implement 3 key practices. So to have healthy and resilient forests and rivers, we need to restore natural areas and floodplains, river valleys, riparian areas, and wetlands across the watershed. And we've identified about 31,000 acres of lands like that need to be restored. In order to have healthy and productive agricultural lands, we need to adopt conservation practices such as cover crops, stormwater management systems to help keep soil and nutrients on the land out of water courses. So those are our big program areas and the things that we focus on. We are an agricultural watershed. Over 75% of the land is used for agriculture, so we need to be working with farmers. In terms of the drivers of increase in our operating budget, one is the increase in demand for services. So our conservation areas over the last 3 years have been almost overrun with people. People have wanted to get out in nature again, which is a good thing. But it has meant that it has increased our maintenance and management activities that we've had to do there. Because not everybody has used them nicely. ATVs have been a bit of an issue in some of our properties. Infrastructure renovations, we did build a new workshop at our office. We've been saving for 20 years to be able to do that, and we finally been able to get that constructed. Salaries and benefits review, we did that last year, and we're going to phase that in over 5 years. We did cap cost of living increases at 3%, and we do that by giving everybody a defined amount based on the midpoint in our salary grid. And of course, projected increases in insurance costs. As everybody knows, insurance is going through the roof. So those are the major drivers. Our draft budget for 2023 is 4.1 million. Our levy increase is $89,777, which equates to about a 4.9% increase. And West Perth increase for 2023 would be $403, because we have a small amount of West Perth. So with that, I think we'd all open to any feedback, questions, comments on what we're doing. We're all different sizes, different things based on the watershed that we have and the demands, interests of our landowners and
Okay, thanks, Bill. Well, thanks, all of you. Questions for our members from the Conservation Authority? Oh, Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for coming here to present to us tonight. One question, I guess it would apply to all 3 conservation authorities. The MPAC assessment proposed for the residential properties. My understanding is that funding for conservation authorities is a function of assessment. So what's the significance of a change in the impact assessment for residential properties? How does that affect your cash? How does that affect your inflow of cash into your operations?
we get an assessment schedule from the Ministry of Natural Resources every year, so we have no, and it's always a few years behind. So I think The CVA modified assessment we got is 2020. Next year it'll be 2021 figures. So the province is always a few years behind, but they provide us with the assessment schedule and the apportionment. And we have no control over it at all. So as the new assessments are phased in, it'll get phased into this assessment schedule.
I guess the follow-up, I'd have to say that all the municipalities would be in the same boat. Everybody would be behind.
And lots of familiarity with the reg in the past and dealing with it in the past. And I think for us and for the three, we have a fairly even distribution of agriculture and rural, not perfectly distributed, but fairly even. So it's a little bit off on agriculture, or it's a little bit off on residential, but it won't have that big of effect of us as it phases in. But for Perth South, which is a highly agricultural area, they would want to get the residential reassessed because their portion of, I think they're fully in the Upper Thames, will change significantly once those residential reassessments come in with the significant increases. But for us, it's fairly balanced because of the mix of use.
Nicholas?
Would the Upper Thames Conservation Authority own lands in West Perth that would be suitable for housing?
That's a great question. And some of the deliverables that were mentioned by Phil, looking at what are our broader lands inventories, will look at what type of encumbrances might be on those lands. Were they actually acquired using provincial funds? Because that's one of the other areas that has to be identified because of the new regulations. But then, yes, what are they zoned as? Are they appropriate for development or not? And those are the types of things that we'll be working through as we're developing those initiatives, as we're calling them, to meet those requirements. So yeah, it'll depend. Certainly there may be, but they may have floodplains, for example. They may be hazard lands. They may not, or wetlands, for example. So they may not have much development potential.
Just a general question, but they talk about the catastrophic weather events we're having and the flood mapping changing and that. Do you guys perceive that the flooding will expand the plains, or is that something that's crossed your radar? Like they talk about the 1,000-year rain now, not the 100-year rain. And
Just to follow up on that comment too. One of the things that we're hoping to receive is additional updated technical guidance from the province. And that is those technical guidance for how floodplains should be mapped and how to consider climate change. And that's the one piece, as Phil was just saying, they really haven't changed those standards in quite some time. And there really hasn't been any guidance on how climate change should be looked at, knowing the changes in weather patterns that we've seen.
Anybody else? Okay, good. I want to thank Phil and Tracy and Brian for coming tonight. Certainly appreciate, always appreciate you coming, but when you tag team like that, I think it makes it a little extra interesting. So thank you very much for coming. I'm just going to look at council here and I see we've had a few people leave and come back and that. Do you want a 5-minute washroom break right now before we carry on? Would that be good? We're not going to bring the lunch out yet. So we'll take a break. We'll make it 10 minutes. How's that? So 25 to, and then hopefully we can wrap up fairly quickly. So good. Okay, we're going to carry on here now, and next item is get the right page here, is dealing with the grant requests. And Dan is going to talk to us about that. And we did have another one from that Ryan had, and my intent was to do that under new business. I think we'll see how this goes. I still would like to do that under new business, if that's okay. But we'll go with your report here, Dan, and carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before council tonight, and as per the policy, is we're looking for council to set the budget for the community donations tonight. So we've outlined a recommendation there, and what I can say is it's based on some figures from last year, which is the first year we did this program, and we've utilized inflation, and we utilized our projected first draft of the budget levy increase percentage to help guide that there. We could use different numbers. We just felt they were valid for this. And one of the reasons is that as we're working through the donation policy, we're finding that a lot of the requests we are getting are maybe more of a operational or capital sense for the municipality in general, as some of these facilities are municipal facilities, and we have user groups using them and maintaining them to our benefit, and we want to keep that doing it, but we also want to be capturing realistic operating costs for some of these facilities. With that said, we also have an ask from 2022. Council approved $5,000 to the Mitchell Fish and Game Club with the condition that they need to bring forward a business plan. We have communicated with them multiple times, and we've not received anything. That said, I have to inform council that as of 3 o'clock today, we received communications from them requesting a 30-day extension. And I will say this was from, I'll say a member and not from one of, I'll use the word the exec or the leadership group that we've been dealing with in the past. So anyways, I just want to put that there before council that they had that request and they felt there was a miscommunication, that they were denied the funds. And I will adamantly stand that we've communicated very clearly with them what the condition of the grant were. With that, I'll just highlight again that if we, the total budget request was $57,294. The first year was $28,300, and we're coming with a recommendation of just around $30,000. And if council were to support the recommendation, we would bring forward a further recommendation of how and where to grant the requests for those funds. And we have lots of, I guess, balance sheets to go through to help with us dictate where the money is best used and who needs it most. I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, questions with regards to the donations or grants, whatever you want to call it? I'm going to make a comment. I don't usually, as a rule, I don't think, but I think it, I think it's fairly imperative that we keep on course and be fairly close to where we were last year. And then I think we give staff the prerogative of going through the grants, and some will get maybe what they asked for and some are going to get less, but and then you come back with us probably maybe even at the next meeting, will you, with the final outcome. And I can verify that there was a number of emails that went to the Fish and Game Club, because I think, how many times did I ask you, Dan, had you corresponded with them, and we kept corresponding and no reply back. So I guess the way I would look at it, I'm going to be, pretty blunt. I think they've missed their boat for this particular year. If they want to come back next year and apply again, we'd certainly look at it. But, they applied, and all we asked for was a business plan, how, and if I remember right, it was whether they put in solar panels or hydro. We just wanted to have a business plan as to what the costs were one way or the other. and it never came. So that was the only thing we asked for. And so I think, personally, I think they've missed the boat, but that's a council decision as well. So any other questions? Ryan, go ahead.
More so just a comment or more than anything, but I would have to agree with what you're saying. I think if there was $5,000 on the table for them and it took them a year to even get back to an email, that $5,000 may be better off used somewhere else or kept in the reserve for somebody that may need it down the road in an emergency situation. But I don't know if 30-day, excuse me, window of extension is necessary. Like you said, they had the time and proper correspondence were sent. So I think we just leave that as well.
Okay, anybody else? Doug, go ahead.
Just tonight, they were asking for donations. Diane Josing from the office turned around and said, it sounds like a lot of these would qualify for things we do. And was there any follow-up to that, whether any of them went to her, or that are all these still on the table?
At this point, all of these are on the table, and that's ultimately as our next step is to maybe make a phone call. And we have some ideas with some of them, as well as potential conditions to bring forward for council, but to go along with that money, we're not all of them are just a check. Some of them would have XYZ as a condition. And certainly in making those calls and reaching out to the community groups, we can ask about that. But as of right now, I would say all of these are still on the table.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Foster, go ahead.
You talked about some of these would be like capital budget projects and things like that. So if they're of that nature, would they be moved then for, I can think of the Fullerton ballparks, like the township, I believe, owns the ballpark itself. So would that be moved to more like Darcy and Rec would be in charge of it and it wouldn't be a donation request anymore? Or how would something like that work?
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good example. And most of the ball diamonds would follow suit, where probably one of the conditions for any of the ball diamonds we'd be looking for is to update our agreements with them and what actually is covered in the agreement, who's responsible for what and XYZ to make sure it's a good relationship that'll serve the municipality well into the future. Particularly, I'll share just with council that for the ballpark request, we're actually going through the process right now of getting the light standards inspected to see if we can even do this request right now. So that'll play into our next report to council, pending on what the council decides tonight.
And I guess just to further explain Dan's comments, it's not because that we're not interested in it. It's just that we want to make sure that the towers are capable of adapting to LED lights and whether they would work or not. So that's part of the course. We don't want to put new lights on if towers won't handle it, you know? So anybody else? Okay, we got the oh, sorry, Doug.
In the Broadhaven Chamber of Commerce, that heat pump and then that would fall under a maintenance thing too for them, or there was like $8,000 or something.
Yeah, and that's part of getting back to the agreements where we said a lot of these requests are coming that are, it's a municipal facility they're looking after, and we're working with them. And the current agreement, it's been expired for a few years as it sits. So it'd be bringing that forward, and if there are capital improvements, there's a process for doing them because it's our facility. And certainly we want their support. We think everyone's doing great work for the community and for the municipality. And we want to see it continue. And we kind of will looking to streamline it and make grants that are grants and capital that it's capital. We also have a lot of requests for grass cutting.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is we don't want to discourage the volunteers that are out there working with these, ballparks and other features. So we certainly want to work with them. And that's the key to the whole thing. But as Dan said, we've got different arrangements with everybody. Certainly, while Broadhaven was for grass cutting, the Cromarty ballpark was for grass cutting. So we give them some money. They hire people to cut the grass. Fullerton, we cut the grass. Our guys cut it there. So there's different scenarios for each particular venue. Anyways, I want to kind of keep moving on here if we can, but if there's any further questions, by all means, say so, and we'll go from there. The recommendation then is that the Council Municipality of West Perth direct the treasurer to include 30,200 for the 2023 council community donation budget, and that the 2022 donation for the Mitchell Fish and Game Club of 5,000 be expired as to the condition to receive the funds was subject to providing a business plan to the municipality. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Don't all jump at once. Councillor Duck and Deputy Mayor Jankowski. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, correspondence. I think it's all self-explanatory there. I don't think we need to really highlight anything or do anything with it. The recommendation then is that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the correspondence as information. Got a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Foster, Councillor Fournier, all those in favor? That is carried. We don't have any council reports that I'm aware of, so it brings us down to bylaws. Bylaw Z 276, 2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 100, 1998, as amended for property described as Lot 10, Concession 5 of the Fullerton Ward of West Perth. And I should go down a little further. We want to do first and second reading for bylaw Z 276 and Z 277, which is the one for McDougall's. So we'll deal with the first and second reading, and then we'll come back with the third reading. So we have a mover and seconder for first and second. Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Chessel, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then finally, that the Council Municipality of West Perth give third and final reading to bylaw Z 276 and bylaw Z 277 this 21st day of February. I have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Harold, Councillor Phelps. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next regular council meeting is March the 6th. We have a couple notices of motion. And this kind of ties in with our budget, I guess. Well, Doug, I'll let you go first. And the motion, do I have a motion here? I'm not sure. Basically that startup budget of 10,000 for the 150 homecoming committee.
Yeah, we're
I'll
just,
let you talk.
we're just looking for some seed money to start up. We're planning on a pre-New Year's dance. There's some expenses that we'll have before we actually have money coming in. But the planning's going very well. I got a good, strong committee, and we're having our open house here on March the 2nd at 7:30 for volunteers and committee members. So we're looking for that initial, that Municipality of West Perth approved startup budget 10,000 for the 150 homecoming committee in this year's budget.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Any questions on that? Okay, you want to move that, Doug? Move it. We're moving it. And a seconder, Councillor Duck. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. The next one then is from Councillor Fournier, and it is that the Council Municipality of West Perth direct treasurer to include $500 in the donations budget for a community garden pilot project. Andrew?
Not actually precisely a community garden pilot project, because I understand we already have some of those. The company that I work for here in town, which was formerly Duracell and now Fatis, their management has agreed to do a pilot project of having an employee garden on unused green space in their around their facility. I'm very much interested in seeing if we can get this one to work, because as I stated, my whole time here on council, I'm interested in housing affordability and food security, all the rest of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'd like it if the municipality could contribute towards this project. We're getting some funds from the management at the company. I have a group of volunteers ready to go, and I'd like to get the project funded slightly.
All right, questions for Andrew on that? You had mentioned, oh, sorry. Well, my question, Andrew, and I think you had mentioned that maybe last week, you were looking at maybe donating some of this, the produce that was grown to the food bank.
Yeah, naturally. I'm trying to work all of this stuff into working for the community as well. So
Okay, and I'm not throwing water on this at all, don't get me wrong, but I just wondered, have you followed up with the food bank if they'll accept it?
I haven't followed up with food bank on that particular item as of yet, no. But they have expressed, all of the food banks that I know express interest in getting green materials at various times. I've worked in the past with the Huron County Food Bank Distribution Center over in the Clinton area. So I have some experience with what they'll take. They are picky about their fresh stuff, but they will take it if you do it properly.
Fair enough. Okay, so you're going to move that, Andrew? Oh, sorry, I got a question here from Dean.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you, your worship. So I guess my question is, who's in charge? I guess that was partially answered. Who's in charge and what's the overall budget? And I guess a little more detail on who the beneficiaries are for this effort. It's strictly my current understanding is strictly employees for the company, and then any extra would go to the community. I just wanted some more clarification.
So far as I know, I'm in charge of the committee. The benefit of the project would, as mentioned, extra would be going to the local food banks, and the other would be offered to the employees at the facility. Anything that isn't taken goes to the food banks as well. The benefit is most of these people are local residents. I'd like to see about getting them a little bit of extra that they don't have at the moment.
Anything further, Dean? Okay, anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councilor Duck.
Thank you, Andrew. Do you have any indication from the company if they're going to be matching that 500 or what their financial obligations are going to be with that, and then what that's totally going to be used for? Obviously, just planting or any sort of idea that way. Yes.
So far as I know, the company was planning on doing a matching amount. I don't have a firm number on that yet, though. However, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. What was the second part?
What we're going to use it for? Like, if we got
Oh.
$1,000, what's that $1,000? Like a tiller? Is it...
No, just plants, soil, and that's basically it. Plants and soil as much as we can possibly put together. Yeah, we're not probably bothering with the tilling thing. I was talking to Tony over at Scott's Greenhouses here in town, and he's going to donate a couple of hours of his time for expert advice, because I mean, he's an expert gardener. Why wouldn't I want his advice? And also some used ground cloths from his greenhouse, so that we don't have to go to all of the bother of doing the tilling. We can just pop these on, keep the weeds out, and go.
Okay, Nicholas, go ahead.
I was wondering if I could ask Jeff a question, maybe the status of the community garden at the tennis court spot. Is that a fair question to ask? What the current status is of that project?
Yeah, so it's different. It's
Good.
different, right? I mean, Andrew's talking about a garden in the community and we're talking about a community garden. So it is a slightly different thing, but I'm happy to say that we obviously, it was late. The boxes went in quite late last year, so the library couldn't do a lot of programming with them, but they're starting off this year. That's a partnership with the library to do the programming on the boxes, the garden boxes that are in at the tennis courts. And we intend that they be community gardens. And they will complement the community gardens that are along the fence, and they're actually quite lovely. The gardens that they run along the fence over here by the property that's straight south of the tennis court, along that south tennis court fence, or our north tennis court fence, our property's north fence. There's community gardens there, and there's also a community garden running down by the EMS, I believe. Yeah. The county, on the county property down there. So there are a couple of community gardens choice. I recognize that this is different, but we're gonna put our community garden programming into the mix at the boxes that we put in at the Veterans Park tennis courts.
All right, any further questions for Andrew on that? So Andrew, you're going to move that. I think I asked you that once before. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Alex, okay. Last call, any discussion, further discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor of that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 carried, yeah. Okay. No, well, because Murray's away. Okay, nope, that's good. So that's carried. All right. Other business, and we had this $300 for the Kin Club. And Ryan, I don't know, you want to elaborate any more? Like we heard the presentation, so we know what it's for, I think.
Yeah, I've just heard a lot of positive feedback from a few different people that are interested in joining and or have already joined. And I think it's a good opportunity. Being it's a kin club, it's men, women, kids, anybody who joins. So I think that we should certainly include that $300 into the budget fund. And somebody would second that for me.
Okay, so Ryan's going to move that. Do we have a seconder? Dean, go ahead. Anything further to add? No, you're just going to say
It goes to our discussions we had in 2018, 2019 on the strategic plan, and we were lamenting the lack of service clubs. So that this would tie in with to our strategic plan initiatives totally. And no, I think it's a good opportunity to get more volunteers into the community as a whole. And Kelly outlined some great project initiatives and ideas that I think this would be an exciting opportunity for our community and something we shouldn't pass up.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Okay, so it's been duly moved and seconded. I think we've had the discussion unless somebody else puts their hand up. So ready for the vote? All those in favor of that motion? And that is carried. Okay, we don't have a closed session tonight. We do have a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 7 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation of the Municipality of West Perth. We read a first and second time this 21st day of February. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Foster, and seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's good. Oh. Yeah, am I going too fast? No.
We had 5 hands up on the motion. I just didn't know how to do it. Just to confirm.
But we have, oh, because it is a valuable. Yeah, okay, all right, yeah.
I thought you had 6, but I might.
Well, I counted, I thought it was 5, but we can double check. Just, well, I don't know who had their hands up, so if you can put your hand up again on that one. Oh, we've got it. What do you got? Okay, so we just,
You have the motion, you can just ask for people to hold their hands up and get it.
can we just do a quick double check here? For who voted in favor. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, that's fine.
I got it. I missed one.
I'm out. Okay. No closed session, confirmatory bylaw. We got it moved and seconded, but we haven't voted on it yet, right? So all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then finally, bylaw number 7 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council received the third and final pass on the 21st day of February. Moved by Councillor Feltz, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And finally, a motion that we do adjourn at 10 o'clock, right on the button. Councillor Chessel and Deputy Mayor Churkowski. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.